So today I will be interviewing Ricardo. He is the founder of the nonprofit Start Day One. Let me tell you, after my conversation with Ricardo, my mindset towards many different aspects of mental health has changed. Let's just say his philosophy towards the topic of depression, stress, and anxiety is very unique that after my psychology learning for almost 10 years, I've never came across his perspective. Keep listening to learn more. Enjoy! Hey y'all, welcome back to Mentally a Badass. My name is Justine and I have Ricardo here, who is actually the founder of Start Day One, which is a mental health nonprofit. And you guys know I love bringing on people who do have nonprofits because it's definitely very important to me to support nonprofits and such. So we are going to be talking about the personal reason why he started the nonprofit and what the nonprofit is about. So welcome, Ricardo. I'm so happy that you're here.
Hey, thank you so much, Justine. I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you like to get started, if you would like to talk about the reasoning behind Start Day One and why you started it.
Yeah, sure. So, Start Day One is a nonprofit foundation for mental health and suicide prevention, with the a more proactive approach to helping people rather than reactively waiting for
Mm-hmm.
mental health issues or suicidal tendencies. From what I've learned with my apparel company, so I have an inspirational brand,
Mm-hmm.
and when I talk to people through that, I get these random messages that tell me, you've really helped me, you've changed my mindset, things like that. But the best ones were the ones that mentioned that, that they were actually suicidal when they met me and they
Mm-hmm.
thanked me for saving their lives. And what
Oh.
I learned from that was that you have to be more proactive. In fact, you have to be, it's a requirement to be proactive to
Mm-hmm.
prevent anything, whether it's diabetes, depression, or obesity.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be proactive about it. The problem is everyone that's in suicide prevention are really more suicide reaction.
Mm-hmm.
They are doing everything and reacting to it. Basically, they're waiting for the results rather than trying to proactively prevent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do like that approach that you're taking. And I definitely know how amazing it feels when people like reach out to you and say like you've saved my life. Like, and that's like the true power of like, social media and people feeling like they can relate to others.
Yeah.
I honestly like in me when I was in high school, like I was suicidal and then I like had to like see a psychiatrist and such. But I
Yeah.
am a huge believer in like preventative because I do feel like the way that this health system is set up and just like overall just like even the justice system just overall is like all about um like when it's already bad to the point and
Right.
then also just like people like committing crimes and all like they're all about like
Yeah.
punishing versus like preventing and
Yeah.
there's like they don't fund enough like programs where it would help like kids like stay out of trouble and such and like instead of just giving up on them, you know what I mean, that they just kind of just like let them do whatever and give up on them and then they're out here making like crimes and then going to jail and then punishing them and
Yeah.
it's just like that's just how this world like is set up and it's just like I'm a huge believer that like I think just being like preventing is way more important. It's definitely very important because why do you're right, like why do we have to wait until someone is at that point where they like want to die and then like they're like at the point when they're like you have to talk them out of it. Like we shouldn't have to wait like that long, that we should like be all like learn as like also a community and like what to look for and like how to like reach like always like make it consistently like reaching out to like friends and just seeing how you're going because like we all have mental health
Yeah.
and some people have like like brain chemistry and stuff and just genetics are more like prone to getting depression, so it's just like
Yeah.
being able to create that community and to change the way we like look at things and just as a society as a whole. Like I feel like what you're doing, like that's like I feel like the key to like helping lower that suicide rate and so it didn't get to that point.
Yeah, so basically everything you've mentioned, what we're trying to do differently, again, is going back to being proactive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you've mentioned so far, basically the problem is that everyone is always trying to remedy the results rather than the cause.
Mm-hmm.
When you remedy the cause, or when you remedy the result,
Mm-hmm.
if and the cause is still there, well, what do you think's going to happen? it's going to stay there, right? You're just
Yeah.
doing different ways of dealing with the result. So
Yeah.
that's not going to do it. Like you can do multiple exercises and this and that, but if you're eating like crap, like, well, what do you think is going to happen to you? Like, what do
Hmm.
you, right?
I
So,
agree.
so that's the real problem there, and is everyone's trying to remedy the result. And actually, what makes it even worse is that in our society, we've made the result the cause. I've heard you say plenty of times already, you're using the results as the cause. You kind of said something about basically like chemical imbalance, people are depression. You mentioned
Yeah.
something about looking for this. And I'm like, why are you looking for this? You don't have to look for people.
Hmm.
Basically, you don't have to look for symptoms of diabetes to tell a kid, hey, don't eat all the candy on Halloween.
Yeah. True.
I don't need to wait for you to say my teeth hurts for me to tell you, hey, listen, Justine, it's probably a good idea to brush your teeth every night so that you don't get cavities. I don't need to be a doctor about it. I don't have to wait for it. I should be just doing that because that's the only way to prevent it. You have to be proactive. And when
Yeah.
I say about making the result the cause, this is what I mean. I've heard it throughout the years, people walking around saying, you're depressed because you have depression, or
Hmm.
you're anxious. Oh, it's because you have anxiety. So let me get this straight. I'm happy because I have happiness. Is that what you're saying? Like, I don't understand what that means, because all you're saying is the result is the cause. That does, now you have a circle that's never ending, and you're
Uh-huh.
fighting an invisible fight, right? And no matter what, all those emotions that you're feeling are actually natural responses. Response is the key word to that. It's just responding to the cause. What is the cause? It's not depression, that's the result. So what is causing the depression? See, a lot of people think,
Hmm.
so from what I've learned and everything, it always stems to from a bad perspective, a negative mindset, things like that. That
Hmm.
is actually what causes it. And what happens is you become depressed. That's why you're in depression. But doctors are telling you you have depression. That's why you're depressed. Oh, so now you're going to think negatively. That is not how it works. It's the same thing with your chemistry, your body chemistry.
Hmm.
Everyone knows the placebo effect, but no one really talks about the nocebo effect. So
Hmm.
when you think one thing, you can actually influence your body into creating these chemicals.
Hmm.
Mostly it's cortisol. So because our human brain hasn't really evolved to the point that it can tell the difference between a lion and, I'm worried if people are going to laugh at me. Like it's the same exact thing. So cortisol starts building up. You get into your fight flight kind of mindset, or sometimes freeze. And what happens is you start busting out this cortisol levels instead of in a relaxation response that actually goes against that. For example, when you get hit by a car, like all you think about is like, oh my God, you're already safe. You didn't get hurt, but you get out of your car and you go, oh my God, now my insurance is going to go up. Oh my God, now I'm late for work. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And so cortisol, cortisol, cortisol. And so now you're stressing out is just a result, right? But why are you stressing out? You're
Yeah.
safe, you're alive, you're good. What's the deal? But as human beings, the perspective is, instead of perspective is, at least I'm alive. Who cares if
Hmm.
I'm late for work? Who cares if I get fired? I'm alive, whatever. But that's not how we roll. So
Hmm.
those are actually all the results. But when we're being told the results are actually the cause, well, guess what happens? Instead of struggling with depression, you're now suffering from it. What's the difference? Because struggling is you have a certain goal, knowing that you can get out of it, just like a marathon runner knows there's a finish line. It is not easy to do a marathon. Doesn't matter if you've been working on it or not, right? You
Hmm.
struggle for the finish line. When you suffer, it's basically you can't do anything about it. So when you say that the depression is the cause, which basically, how do you fix that? There's no fixing it, right? Because depression is the cause. Oh, okay, so that's the result. And what happens is you suffer because I just took all accountability away from you. I actually heard you say mental illness. So that actually backfired in the mental health environment. Why? Well, because what we've done is we were trying to get rid of the stigma with mental health, right?
Hmm.
So we decided to call it mental illness. It actually backfired because when you say mental illness, I've now said, like, oh, Justine, it's not your fault. It's not you at all. It's depression. That's why you're depressed. That's why you became suicidal. It has nothing to do at all with you forgiving your dad or forgiving yourself or anything at all. It's just that you have it. That's all. And you need drugs for that. So that's not going to work for me. right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's actually the problem. You're taking away all the accountability. Like, what do you think are going to happen to people when you tell them there's nothing you can do about it? Well, they're going to suffer now because now
Yeah.
they have, and we're in a bad place, and I'm sure you were, obviously, is we tend to hate accountability and we tend
Mm-hmm.
to love excuses. This is everyone,
Yeah.
including myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not because you're a bad person. I'm not saying you're an excusitis, like no, it's just that it's what happens to us no matter what. And then when you feel better, that's when you actually say like, oh, I guess everything happens for a reason. Like, come on, man. Like you didn't say that when you were in a bad place though. Why? It's because you weren't in a good place yet. Your mindset was still messed up. And so that those are the things that we actually have to teach out there and educate people. Like you're being taught the wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
It's all based on accountability. It's all up to you. There's not one book, one therapist that does anything for you. You don't need a book to feel better.
Yeah.
A therapist doesn't give you a magic pill so you feel better. They just talk to you. So what is are they actually doing? The main thing that these books, movies, therapists, what they're doing is really just shifting your perspectives. And that's
Mm-hmm.
it. Because once you shift your perspective, your decisions follow. And that's why that's so important to really shift people's perspectives on things.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I'm like a huge believer in like the accountability. I do feel like we are like a society filled with excuses. Like, and it's just when you're at the point when you like have personal growth and you like understand like when stuff happens and you're like mature enough to realize like, okay, I'm not gonna be just blaming like everything. Like I have to take accountability
Yeah.
for myself. Which like I completely do agree on. What is your like okay, so what is your take on like schizophrenia, since like in the brain, like you know what I mean, like they have like
Yeah.
hallucinations, like just I wanted to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah. So schizophrenia, basically, that's like way off my field of expertise, right?
Okay.
Because well, because the what I everything that I talk about is prevention. Again, I don't need to
Hmm.
be a dentist to tell you like, hey, you should brush your teeth every day.
Yeah.
No one's gonna ask like, well, what's your feel on the cavities on the molar? Like, I don't know. I just know to brush it. you know.
Yeah. Would
So
you
I'm more about the
yeah.
prevention aspect of it, and
Hmm.
it's the same thing. Like, I'm not against taking the pills.
Yeah.
I'm not against you getting insulin when you already have diabetes. You already have diabetes. I can't
Hmm.
prevent it anymore. You already have it. That's no longer prevention. So
Yeah.
I'm not the person to talk to about that. So I'm trying to prevent it, just like you mentioned before, how important it is, because the great thing about being proactive is not only is it good for prevention, it's actually great for prediction. I can
Hmm.
predict that you will have less cavities if you brush every day. I will
Yeah.
predict that you're going to have mental health issues if from 5 years old to 18, I kick your ass and call you a loser every fucking day as your dad. Like guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's what it does. So no matter what, it has to be proactive. And so basically what I started realizing is like, okay, I need to really fix the problem, right? I'm all about
Hmm.
remedying the cause. What is
Hmm.
causing it? So if it's based on our decisions, our lives, right? All of the decisions we're making. So what influences that decision? That's when I realized it's actually our perspectives. But before we go into perspective, well, how do we know what's right or wrong, right? That's why I started realizing I'm like, oh, that's because of the sense of purpose. You don't have a sense of purpose, you're not going to know the right perspective.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like when people tell me, like, oh, I feel lost. Okay, first question, where the fuck are you going? Like, where are you going? Like, you can make a left here, right there. It's still the wrong way because which one is, how are you ever going to know the right way if you don't know where you're going? And number two, to persevere and where you're going, you need to know why you're going there. If
Yeah.
you don't freaking know why you're going there, let's say I'm going to California. Oh, okay. And then there's a storm. I'll just go next week. Right. But if it was because, oh, my aunt has cancer and she really needs me, and I really want to be there. Well, guess what? You're going to look for the next flight. You're going to rent a car if there's no flights. You're basically going to do everything you can to get there. And
Yeah.
so that's the perseverance because of your purpose. Now, talking about purpose.
Hmm.
So what is purpose? Everyone kind of knows what it is, right? They're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I gotta find my purpose. Like, first of all, already that's wrong because you have
Yeah.
to create your purpose. You never
Exactly.
find purpose.
100%.
Yeah. So you can never find a purpose because of my startup experience, with businesses and stuff. I learned that just like a startup, you don't find a purpose for your startup. You create it. That's why you have the startup. Well, the same thing with you as a person. Now, people know, like, oh, it's my why. It's like they know this purpose, right? And then, but still, why are people having a hard time developing purpose? It's
Mm-hmm.
because they're being taught the wrong things. What
Yeah.
purpose is. People think, I want to be a rock star. I want to be this. I want to own a car. So there's the two major characteristics that I've learned that I've come up with that really helps you create a purpose. Number one, it must be a verb. And
Mm-hmm.
number two, it must benefit and provide value to other people, not
Yes. 100.
yourself.
Exactly.
So
100%.
so when you say like I want to be a rock star, I want to be a doctor, those are not purposes because those are nouns. As a
Yeah.
doctor, your purpose should be to help people in
Mm-hmm.
their health to make sure they're okay or whatever. It's
Yeah.
always to verb. Always. Just like any great mission statement for businesses. If Facebook said, we want to be the best social network, it okay, then why are you buying Oculus Rift? What's with WhatsApp? Like, why are you buying those? So
Yeah.
their mission is actually to connect people around the world, to
Mm-hmm.
connect. So
Yeah.
the reason you want purpose is because purpose doesn't give a shit about pain or pleasure. It goes
Mm-hmm.
straight through. Elon Musk lost almost all his money because of what he was trying to do with SpaceX, right? He was trying to save the humankind. That was his purpose. So without that, you think he would have spent almost all his money? No way. You know, he almost went broke again. He was actually getting credit cards to pay rent, even though he was a gazillionaire. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what? That's freaking insane, right?
Yeah.
So that's what people need to do. That's why rock stars commit suicide because their dream was to be a rock star. Okay, you're a rock star now. Now what?
Right. And if it's not like, making an impact, and it's like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, for people like artists that I follow, like there's some new ones who are just becoming like into becoming a rock star. Like they talk about like how they are literally like their music is helping people. Like with
Mhm.
their like I mean there's some music I mean music honestly like I need music in my life every single day. Like it helps me personally. It helps
Yeah.
like and I honestly like just thinking about like just listening to what you're saying and like from you can't like go back to like what
Yeah.
happened in your life, but you can
Yeah.
start a new beginning.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just
That's right.
thinking back like if I cuz like I from what I'm getting from what you're saying I I when I went through like my childhood had a lot to do with like the way I was thinking about when I was in high school. I was like bullied and like I know a lot of stuff happened and such.
Yeah.
So that created like a lot of like trauma, which then like manifested into like depression. So
Yeah.
like if there's ways
Exactly.
of like preventing it, like schools taking it more seriously with bullying, for example, like I was just like living lives and like knowing how to treat each other better and like have the kind of like personal development like level that you have and like a lot of you're right like a lot of people were really taught the wrong thing like growing up like
Yeah.
I'm today like teaching my mom certain things. My mom has like really like she's in a like she doesn't care if I say it, but she's in a really like bad mental state and I try to like help her and everything.
Yeah.
And it's just how she was brought up. It
Yeah.
was first
Exactly.
it was like not even spoken about mental health in my mom's generation. And
Yeah.
then like her just having like, the anxiety and just depression is just like, okay, like I just have it. Like that's it. Like and
Yeah.
then, I'm like the first family member in like my line. Could I have like my line of people who had like my grandmother, my mother, and there's me. I'm the first person out of my family that is like, I'm like, that's it. Like, I'm not gonna be carrying this on throughout my family history. Like, this is not something that I'm going to accept. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I've been through, XYZ and I've had all these like issues that I'm like, I'm learning to like recover from and like to like trauma and such. And I'm like that's what I and like that's like my purpose is in, like helping others, like do the
Yeah.
same thing just like what like you're doing. And like
Yeah.
that and honestly like finding okay, not finding because I'm creating creating
Good catch.
see
Good catch.
see I guess you're right and it's just like I honestly, I truly believe when you say that you don't find like, you create your purpose.
That's
Like,
right.
yeah, you
Thank you.
create your purpose. And I just think like, we are just always like, people always saying finding. And I think like I'm not out there like, I guess, like walking around in like a beach, be like, hey, what is my purpose? You know what I mean? Like I feel
Yeah.
like I create my purpose based off of what I went through in my past. And a lot of people do create their purpose off of like, basically helping others to like not like, I don't know, I just feel like there's like a reasoning behind people's purpose, but that like why they created that purpose.
Yeah.
And so like that's why like I do all this like mental health advocacy, and I have my podcast, and like I basically like dedicated like my life in that. And also I feel like having a purpose is is what keeps me to not like have like those like suicidal like tendencies, and like have like, and I know I'm like here, like I went through crap, but like I'm here for a reason,
Yeah.
and I'm here to help the people who were taught wrong. And like, you're doing the same thing, and it's just like amazing. Like I said, social media is just connecting with other people who have that same mission in life.
Right, right. So there's a couple of things just listening to you what you kind of mentioned, right? I guess one of the things that I want to say, when you talk about like previous, I guess your parents and previous generations, why wasn't there any talk of depression, mental health, and all that stuff? Well,
Mm-hmm.
also, but what's funny is when you compare it to the past, was actually less mental health issues at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that is I don't know to myself too. I'm kind of confused. I'm not sure when depression became abnormal. I don't know when anxiety became abnormal because
Mm-hmm.
they're just natural responses. Well, if you think
Mm-hmm.
you're going to freaking fail at the speech in front of your class, you're going to get anxious. What the hell is abnormal about it? When you think
Mm-hmm.
about your death and you think you're going to be a loser in the future because you got bullied and this and that, well, what do you think is going to happen? If you don't get depression, that's what's weird. So to me, it's like, yeah, they're all natural responses. So I don't understand. So what's actually happening is we need to educate people on how to prevent that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because those are just the results. Again, I have to emphasize that all the time. Those are just results. They're temporary results. Depression is not permanent. The same way happiness is not permanent. Just because you get out of depression, you think you're going to be happy forever? If
Mm-hmm.
you have that
Yeah.
mindset, you're always going to be depressed because you
Yeah.
walk I can't be happy forever. Dude, who is? Like, who is?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
You're happy forever, like you're like not a human being.
Exactly. And so there's a lot of things that I'm learning, right? Like, okay, so let's talk about the depression and all that stuff. So when I learn about emotions, emotions are actually things that it's not really based on what you can see from your past. It's actually what you can't see in your future. That's actually what's happening. Just look at depression. It's not because of what happened in the past. It's what you think is still happening today, and it's going to keep on going in the future. When you
Mm-hmm.
were young, you thought it was going to be a bullied lifestyle forever, all the way.
Yeah.
And now here you are. There's people that already committed suicide because they thought what's their life. So the
Right.
problem
Yeah.
with that is because they identified themselves as what they were is based on the past.
Mm-hmm.
A lot, like I've been caught in that, place where I said, we're a product of our decision, but not necessarily. Yes, we are, but only to what you're trying to be. So the future is actually a lot more important than people think. So the future is meant to guide you. You learn from the past, but you execute in the present. It has to be harmonious, has to be simultaneous. It is not just one, live in the present moment. Like, yeah, don't do that because then you're going to max out all your credit cards. I'm just saying, don't do that. And then all of a sudden you have no goals. And then you're like, dude, it's going to get you in trouble. And if you deal only with the past, you're in trouble. If you deal only with the future and not learn from your past, you're in trouble also. So there's a lot of things you have to really figure out, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then, so really, it's what's more important is really your future self. And that's where we get into the growth mindset and all that stuff. So because you're trying to be your future self, so everyone that's listening, the Justine you're hearing today was not the same person 5 years ago. Guess what happens 5 years from now? We're not going to talk to the same Justine again. At
Mm-hmm.
least we hope not. That's what trauma does. It keeps people not to evolve.
Yeah.
Right? And so growth mindset, inspiration is actually what helps that. So trauma is
Yeah.
almost the opposite of inspiration. Inspiration shifts your perspective in a positive way. Trauma goes the negative way, right? And so when I talk about future, so what you want to do is really figure out where you're going. That's what I meant before. When you're in a car, you got to figure out where you're trying to go. Unless you don't know where your future destination will be, you will never know. So, what happens when you're in a car and you don't know where you're going? You look at your GPS, right? For the GPS to work, there has to be a fucking location. Like there has to be, right?
Yeah.
Let's say your battery ran out. Are you no longer gonna get there? You ask for freaking directions. Well,
Yeah.
that means mentors, therapists, whatever it is. You try to figure out how to get to where you're going. Not, I have a problem. I'm lost. Then that's it. Well, how am I gonna give you directions if I don't even know where you're trying to go? So unless you know who you're trying to be, you will never know. So just like you know, when you're lost, I tell people like, so you're basically just in the highway and you're putting your car in park and you're just sitting there. Like that's it. And that's what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing. But what you instead do is figure out where you're trying to go, ask for direction, this and that. Now, when you find out where you're going, you might now realize you took the wrong turn 5 years ago. And now
Right.
you're going to go, shit. Well, guess what? It's going to take you a lot longer to get there, but you know where you're going and you know how to get there now. It's not impossible to get there because all roads are connected, right?
Mhm.
So you just have to figure out how you're going to get there. And so that is very important. And so, you really have to figure that out. So when I talk about the, depression, anxiety, all that stuff, it keeps going back to purpose, right?
Mhm.
Because when you have this future mindset, the reason you need purpose is because purpose is never ending.
Mhm.
Facebook's purpose of connecting people around the world, when does that stop? Pandemic, no pandemic, or like when will that stop to connect people around the world? It's infinite. It's
Yeah.
infinite. That's why when you say social network, well, what if now we're in a virtual reality world? Social networks are like, what is that? You know what I mean? Your grandchildren are not going to know, like, what's Facebook? Like, what are you talking about? So it has to be never ending. And that's why it requires to be a verb and it requires to benefit other people. When you
Yeah.
focus on yourself, that's why people get so freaking depressed. They focus on themselves so much
Mhm.
that they're comparing to everyone. And one of the best ways for me to like get people out of that rut is like, do you care if your friends were like garbage men, janitors, things like that, and but they're super nice to you and just kind to the world? They're like,
Mhm.
no, yeah, they don't give a shit about you being that either. Like, so why are you so concerned about being rich and famous and this and that? And you have to have this degree and what? Why? Who? The only one that cares about that is you or
Mhm.
your mom or your son. Either way, you're focusing on other people. When you focus on giving, it that's what purpose does automatically.
Yeah.
So because giving and progress are the best ways to stay happy, to
Oh my
continue.
gosh, yes. I truly, honestly, like I feel that like with this and then also like I work with One Hope Wine, which like donates to like nonprofits as well. Like
Yeah,
that's what like gets me going and like makes me I like honestly I truly feel like it's like really is what gotten me like out of that rut. Is like when I wake up and like, have like that purpose to do good. I feel like
yeah.
we're on this cuz I was also thinking lately today I was doing errands and actually we go yesterday I was with a friend and I was like we see a lot I live in Florida and there's like a lot of homeless people around where I was and I just like always
Mhm.
like feel for them and such. And
Yeah,
then also when I went to Dunkin' today to get some coffee, they have like a huge shortage in like workers and it's like I don't know like the homeless person story obviously like I don't know how they got there like I don't
yeah,
know anything like that, but it just like I kind of like wish that the world was a better place where we're here to help like every human being, like despite
yeah.
of like whatever happened. I mean, like if they killed somebody, it's a different story. But
Right.
like you know what I mean? Like I see this
Yeah.
the world is just also so cruel to homeless people too. You
And
know?
well, right, exactly. And the thing is, it's because they lack purpose. And so when you talk about homeless people, we have to talk about like, okay, why are they there? How they get there? Things like that, right?
Yeah.
And because people keep waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Just the same way people wait until their kid isn't getting out of their room, and now I'm gonna hug you.
Right.
Now I'm going to take you to the park, go to the movies, and things like that. Now I'm going to spend time with you because I see symptoms of depression. So now what I'm going to do is love you. Like you should have been doing that with or without that. You know the best time to exercise? Today. Not when you're 5 pounds over, 10 pounds, 500 pounds,
Yeah, definitely.
right? It's today, whether you're in shape or not. But what
Yeah.
people are doing is like, hey, I'm a fitness instructor. Call me when you're 500 pounds. Awesome, dude. That's awesome. That's
That is
great.
so not good.
Yeah,
Like who
exactly.
made
And
these
that's
rules?
right. Exactly. It's like it doesn't make any sense. It's like not giving anyone a toothbrush and saying like, yo, I have the tools to take your teeth out. So just let me know when. That doesn't make any sense. And the thing is, it doesn't make sense to you right now saying that, but that's exactly what we do every freaking day with mental health. I mean, I'm talking, it's the natural thing to do is look for symptoms. September 10th is National Suicide Prevention Day.
Hmm.
And the things that you're going to see are things that come out that's saying we need to help people look for symptoms of anxiety and depression. It's cute that they only focus on two emotions, you know? It's like, I don't get it. Like, that's just two emotions. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't make
I
any sense.
think, yeah.
And I've been like challenged before. Is like, I take medicine for anxiety. Like, so I'm like, okay, let's test it out. What causes you to be anxious? You're like, when I'm in a car. Okay, dude, like there are a lot of people in cars. What makes you anxious? I need to
Yeah,
know.
it's like asking those questions. Like a lot of people have a hard time, digging a little bit deeper. You know what I mean? Like I like today. I'm gonna tell you like today. It's actually gonna sound like probably like it's really not that serious, and it's actually kind of stupid. But it's just an
Yeah,
example I'm trying to give to you. So
yeah.
today, like I woke up and Disney released their annual pass, like their new prices and whatever. Right now, currently, I work for Disney, so I get free admission, but I plan on leaving shortly. Possibly if I get a new job somewhere else. So I was
Mhm.
planning getting annual pass, and then the prices were just so insane that I may not even be able to get the annual pass. And
Yeah,
like so and after that, like I started like not I started feeling like I'm very self-aware on when I know where I'm feeling that like that wave of like feeling that depression. I know like I know
yeah,
I'm feeling this way. I'm knowing I'm experiencing this
yeah,
kind of like feeling is
yeah,
because I got upset, I got a little I got triggered by that. And like I know, like I said, it's not the end of the world. Like I know it's something so minor, but I
yeah,
think my point is just kind of like the concept of it. It's like a lot of people in this world are just not self-aware, and I think it's
yeah.
also about like power of self-awareness and like how to be self-aware is also extremely important with like people to prevent and like people's mental health journey and such.
Right. And that's why I try to change people's perspective. Because once you change people's perspectives on things and knowing, they become one more aware, and two, they know what to do. Because, for example, you know, yoga, meditation, those are all great ways to remedy the result
Mm-hmm.
when you're stressing out, when you're depressed. And I get it, they are helpful. But if your perspective is wrong, you're going to need a lot of yoga. You're going to need a lot of meditation because
Mm-hmm.
you never remedied the cause. You're only remedying the result. Because if it's because, for example, uh, people say you got to think positive. And it's like, yeah, that's not enough. You have to change your perspective.
A
So
hundred
what I
percent.
mean
Yeah.
by that is, if you think the only way to feel proud of yourself or to feel worthy is when daddy pats your back, well, you can think positive all you want about this time I'm going to do this. And how about next week? Oh, man, I'm going to do this. And then, oh, when I become a doctor, then,
Oh, it's
well,
like the whole when I'm gonna do this and then I'll be happy. Like that, yeah, that whole
exactly.
toxic way of thinking.
Exactly. That's positive as hell, right? Oh, yeah, I'm going to do it next week and
It's
win the
positive,
tournament
but it's like
thing.
the wrong, like
Perspective.
wrong way. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So when you have the wrong perspective, it doesn't matter how positive you are. And that's why people think it doesn't work. Well, because if your
You're doing it wrong.
perspective Yeah, if your perspective is still wrong, it's always going to be wrong. And that's why I always say, like, that's why you need a sense of purpose because you need to know if your perspective is a threat or a benefit to your purpose. With Justine's podcast over here, she needs to have instead of saying, I'm going to have a podcast that deals with mental health, that's a noun. If her purpose is to educate and inspire people to change their perspective so they can live a better life, well, guess what? That's fucking forever. And she can
Mhm.
do that through this podcast, and it's never going to freaking end. And it's always going to be about someone else. She's not
Yeah.
concerned about how many likes, she's not concerned about how many shares. So all she's concerned about is like, did she change your freaking mind about something? Are you happier today? And so that's what really changes, and that's what keeps you going because now you're no longer concerned. It's a lot easier, and it helps you with imposter syndrome, thinking like, man, what, who am I to do this? I only have 3 followers. I don't understand. Like,
Mhm.
do you care about 3 followers if you are focused on your purpose? No.
Mhm.
And that's what purpose does. And it automatically makes you give to people. And
Mhm.
that's why it's so important to really develop this. And so I've developed this like sort of like a formula, right? So it
Yeah.
always starts with purpose. Then you see if a threat is a benefit. A perspective is a threat or a benefit to your purpose. Once you
Mhm.
have that, that's when you can actually make a decision. But if you can't change your perspective because of trauma or something, you have to shift that perspective. How do we shift that perspective? Inspiration. A
Mhm.
lot of people don't know the difference between inspiration and motivation. I didn't know it
Mhm.
myself. I only found out the past freaking 5 years. So here's the big difference: inspiration and motivation. Inspiration comes before shifting your perspective. Motivation comes after you make a decision.
Mhm.
So they're totally not the same. Inspiration is also something you're exposed to. Motivation is more a demanding you
Yeah.
do something to, it's basically forcing you to do something,
Right.
motivating you to do something. Well, you
Mhm.
can't do something if you don't know, if you haven't decided to do it yet. And to decide to do that, you need your perspective. So inspiration is basically something that just shifts your perspective indirectly through exposure. That's it. And then once I do that, you're inspired because you watch Jerry Maguire or freaking some new movie or whatever it is. You got inspired by some YouTube video on TED Talk, whatever it is. All of a
Yeah.
sudden you're like, yeah, I'm going to start my own podcast now. Sweet. And now that you've made that decision, that's when you start motivating. A lot of people think all these results, like, the answers to your problems come before you make a decision. It is not. That's not how
Mhm.
it works.
Mhm.
Justine didn't figure out the entire industry of podcasting before she started this podcast. What she did do, though, is let's say, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast. Fuck. What do I use? You know what? Anchor. I'm going to use Anchor because she researched it, right?
Yeah.
So that's how that came about. She didn't find Anchor and said, oh, you know what? I should come up with a podcast. Like, that's not how it works. And so it's really after the decision. So motivation comes after the decision. Now I can tell you, because without a goal, I cannot motivate you. I cannot motivate you to do
Mhm.
anything. The same way I can't motivate Justine, like, come on, let's go out, just because she broke up with her boyfriend recently.
Mhm.
I didn't shift her perspective yet, and I'm motivating her to try to go. I become annoying, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
It always happens. It's just like, dude, stop. Like, okay, gee, like, oh my God, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Because you haven't changed their perspective yet. So it is
Right.
impossible to motivate them. And that's where passion comes from at the same time. After the decision, how the fuck are you going to know you're going to be passionate about something you've never done before?
Mhm.
You have to freaking do it. You have to.
Yeah.
And that's why people like confidence is the same thing. They think they have to be confident about talking in front of class, and then they'll talk in front of class. Dude, you talk in front of the class, and then you keep gaining confidence.
Right.
Like, and so these little things that can shift your perspective, we're in this blame game, and so it's really the things that I talk about. I'm hoping changes people's perspective on different things, surrounding mental health. And because that's the way you permanently help people. All of us are going to go through this. And if you don't know that this is natural and you think you're supposed to have a smile every day, you're going to look weird.
You're being human. You're gonna like also
You're going to
like
look weird.
that's even like really bad to your mental health if you're like I'm happy every day. I'm happy every
Yeah.
day.
Well,
It's
what's
like
funny
then you
is
break because you're human. You're human. You're
that's
gonna break
right.
down.
So one of the things I talk about with my apparel brand is that it's impossible to live life to the fullest because it's human nature to take life for granted. That's why we complain on Mondays, traffic, weather, stuff like that. You tell me when you're awesome with traffic. Like, like, come on.
Yeah.
Nothing bothers you ever. You're not human. And people don't really understand when I say it's impossible to live life to the fullest. And I'm just like, no, it's because it's a requirement to have conflict, struggle, challenge. And what I mean by that is, tell me one great movie you've seen
Mm-hmm.
without any conflict or challenge. Go.
Oh. No.
Right? Nothing. There's not one
That
movie without
wouldn't
a
be a
conflict.
movie. That would just be like
A
images that you're
documentary.
looking at. I don't know. Like, yeah. But man, I
Yeah.
think. honestly, I feel like just having this conversation with you, like I've learned some new things myself.
Good,
Honestly, I
good.
mean, like I work all the time to like, personal growth, because that's like what I agree with you on is like personal growth is like so important when it comes to like mental health. And like without having personal growth in that, like incorporating that, then it's like
Yeah,
you're gonna keep falling back into depression. Like personal growth is so powerful and such.
yeah,
And we got some really, honestly, I feel like this, I can't wait for people to like listen to this, because I feel like you provided so much value. All right. Well, Ricardo, I truly do appreciate you being on my podcast. And then I am gonna put like your all the links that you gave me, I'll put it in the description.
cool.
So the people who are listening can definitely check out your nonprofit. I do see here you offer coaching calls, which I truly believe definitely can be like very valuable for people who, need to have like that help with going through those steps that you mentioned. So again, I truly want to thank you for, being on my podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And then tell my listeners, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, evening, morning, whatever is the time over there. And I hope you guys have a good time. Thanks for listening. All right, in next week's episode, we are going to be talking with TikToker Brandon from the TikTok account Happiness Hacks. We talk a lot about personal development as well as his past and why he is doing what he is doing today. He also gives us that secret of happiness, so stay tuned for next week's episode.